In this video, I'm going to show you how to cut plywood without a table saw. Find out how coming up next. What's going on, folks? Kendall here with Renos for Pros and Joes, helping you simplify the renovation and remodeling process. On this channel, we do hands-on product, tool, and gear reviews, as well as renovation tip and strategy videos. So if you're interested in renovation, remodeling, repair, real estate, or home improvement, then subscribe because this channel and this content is for you. So in today's video, I'm going to be showing you how to cut plywood without a table saw. Now, this can be a situation you can find yourself in if you are away from your home and away from your shop and you need to make cuts on site. And I'm going to show you a very handy tool to be able to do this. This is going to be my first time using this tool, and I am aware that there are also other options, so make sure to check out the reviews on this one, and I'm going to also have some links to some other products that are similar to it. So the first thing we're going to do is grab our piece of plywood and get set up and mark our locations, and then we'll go ahead and get the saw ready. Let's jump into it. So when you're getting ready to cut your piece of plywood, one of the first steps that you want to take is to mark off the location where you want to make your cut. You can do this using a straight edge if you've got one that's long enough, or you can also piece it out with a shorter straight edge, or you can use a chalk line. I'm going to be using a straight edge just for the sake of time. And this sheet of plywood is 4x8, which is the standard size. And the cut that we're going to be making today is going to be a rip straight down the middle. So we're going to cut this thing lengthwise, and we're going to be left with two pieces that will be 2 feet by 8 feet. So we're going to make our line here in the middle. We're going to run it all the way down to this end of the board, and then we'll make our cut. All right, so now we've got our line marked off on our piece of plywood. This is OSB, but close enough. It's a 4x8 sheet, and it's going to get the job done. We'll be able to demonstrate on this just fine. But one thing that I want to point out with regards to table saws is that some cuts are not going to be as easy to make on table saws if you don't have a complete setup. And this is one of them. This sheet is 4 feet wide by 8 feet long. So if you're going to cut this on a standard size table saw, you're going to have a table or some additional supports behind the saw and able to catch a board of this size. And so a tool like the one I'm going to show you may be actually more ideal than the table saw. And as I said, the tool that I'm going to be demonstrating today is right here. I've not used this tool before, and it was actually a gift to me, which is evidenced by the gift receipt here still attached to it. And so as I said, I will have a link to this tool in the description box below. Read the reviews and judge for yourself. And I'll also do my best to find some additional options that are similar in style to this product as well. So let's go ahead and unbox it. This type of tool is designed to go on any table saw. And I'm just going to go ahead and pop the plastic off of it here so that we can see exactly what we've got here. All right, so now that I've installed it, I can give you a quick rundown of how this thing goes. So as you can see, it's got 3 basic parts that come in the package. One is going to be this long blue piece here. And you've got the metal piece here and another blue piece, which is actually the portion that the saw is attached to. So we've got 2 screws here. See if I can hold it this way. that attaches the metal to this blue plastic piece here. This is the part that rides along the edge of the material that you're cutting. And then this is actually the sled. I believe this is the sled for the saw. In any case, this one is clamped down to the circular saw, and it's got 2 clamps here that can be adjusted so that this will fit most saws. It doesn't fit this saw perfectly, but after I tightened it down some, it's not moving at all, so I feel secure with moving forward with it. It also has a plate here that goes on the side so that you can remove the saw and put it back on here the exact same way that you set it up initially. That will be awesome for when you're going to be taking the saw off and putting this away for storage. You can always go back, and your settings and everything will be the exact same way that you had them prior to putting it away. Now, another cool feature that this rip cut has is that it has a red line mark here so that you can make fine-tune adjustments to make sure that your blade is lined up with your line that you've made here on your material. I'm also going to adjust the height of the saw so that I don't cut through my makeshift table underneath this plywood, because essentially what I'm going to be doing is setting this thing up and getting it ready to go, and then just sliding it all the way across. All right, let's check my work and see how well I did. That looks pretty good to me. As you can see, it's pretty consistent there. You can see my blue line there. I left the line on this piece here, and we can pretty consistently see that blue line all the way across this board. And so we made a pretty consistent cut there, and that's not bad for a first try. So I had a few little hiccups there along the way, but I'm going to share a couple of pointers in case you choose to get this particular product. All right, folks, so I have to say that this tool performed pretty well. A couple pointers that I want to make sure to drive home is that when you've got this saw on the sled setup and you're preparing to make your cut, the main thing that you want to make sure is that your blade is lined up with the little red line portion here on the front of the saw. Let's see if I can do this. Before I do that, I'll pull my battery out here so we can handle this thing freely. So if I hold the saw up like this, you can see that there is a red line here, and this piece of plastic moves independently from this piece of metal so that you can make sure that you line up your cut point right here with the blade on the saw. And you can look through the opening here and make sure that everything is lined up before you begin cutting. So that is one huge piece of advice and tip to keep in mind. The other thing that you want to keep in mind the entire time that you're cutting is that you want to make sure that you've got this piece of the sled pushed jam up against the board here. And that can be a little bit difficult to get started back here because you don't have anything to make sure that it's lined up and square up against, but just make sure that you're providing even pressure against it as you slide the saw along, because if you've got a sharp blade on your saw, the saw is going to cut through the plywood no problem. So as long as you're holding the blade down or holding your button down to keep the blade engaged, you're fine over here. You want to mainly focus on keeping the saw flat on the material that you're cutting and keeping this jam up against the side of the material here, right here. And so as it slides along, you just want to make sure that you're keeping everything consistent. Another thing that you want to make sure of, and you may have seen it in my recording, is that you want to make sure that the surface that you're cutting on is also smooth, because there's a few points where the sled here got bound up on some of this OSB that is beginning to come apart. And I had to stop and back up and remove a piece, or just back up and slide forward again to make it move. And that's not what you want to get into when you're trying to make a very smooth cut. As you can see, this cut is actually pretty smooth, and it came out pretty much as good as I could have hoped for. Additionally, you want to make sure that both sides of the board are supported, because if you don't, then you could run the risk of this thing pinching on the front or in the back, or the board beginning to drop down and bind on the saw, all of which can be potentially dangerous situations. So as you can see here, I made my cut all the way through, but both pieces of the board are still on top of the table and very well supported. This piece of board has still got quite a bit of table underneath it. It's actually completely on the table pretty much. So it's just something else to keep in mind as you're doing this. One more thing to keep in mind is when you get to the end of your board, it can be a little bit more difficult to make the saw pass all the way through, because you still have the sled attached and the saw is back here. And so once you get to the point where you're trying to bring the saw all the way through the material, you're going to have to try to hold the sled back here to make sure that you can cut all the way through the end at the depth that you need. So I had to make 3 or 4 passes to make sure that I got to the end of it and cut through clean, but it ended up not being a big deal. It did not mess up my cut. So I think those are the main pointers to take away. As I said, I will have links to this tool in the description box below, but I will also say that there's no way that I could have cut this board in half like this with this type of uniform results doing it by hand. I'm not someone that uses a circular saw every day, and I'm sure that there are people out there who can rip this thing in seconds, almost just eyeballing the board. I'm not in that club, and if you're not either, then you probably want to look at getting a tool like this. The other thing I also want to mention is that in some situations, this may actually be better than using a table saw, for the simple fact that you don't have to have another person holding the edge of this board if you've got a proper platform here. And you also don't have to worry about having to lug around a big table saw. So this is just a circular saw with this little component on here, and it actually comes off and slides off pretty easily. You just disengage it right here, and then you slide this portion out, and you're back broken down. This portion here comes off as well. So you have to unscrew or back out these screws here slightly to loosen it up, and then you're good to go. You're back to just having your regular saw the way you normally use it. So I'm gonna go ahead and just do that real quickly just to demonstrate. And taking it apart, and we're back to just having our regular circular saw. One other thing that I wanted to mention is that with the housing on this, you want to make sure that you've got a good fit on your saw. As I said, when I set mine up, this does not fit perfectly on my saw, but I was able to tighten it down, and when I did that, it did not move at all. But I didn't like exactly the way that it sat on the saw, but it proved to not be an issue when cutting this material. So let me just quickly show you a close-up of what these boards look like, so that you can see you didn't have any type of binding or burning of the wood. It's just a straight, clean cut. All right, so this is what I wanted to show you, is just the edge here, so you can see that it's clean, and it's clean all the way down. Okay, so now that I've made my cut, I can jump back to working on my project. Hopefully you found this video informative. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you all on the next one. All right, so I've actually got to make 2 cuts. I only made 1, so let me hop right back out here and get this thing squared away. So previously, when I was showing you the pointers for what to do with regards to making your sled slide smoothly. I mentioned that I had an issue here with sliding the sled on rough surface. And so since I'm still cutting on the same surface here, which is this OSB, I am just going to hang the edge of my board off slightly, which is about 2 inches. This way I don't have to worry about the bottom of this portion of the sled getting bound up on some of the rough OSB that is starting to delaminate. So I'm gonna start back here. Everything's gonna be gone the exact same way. I'm gonna scoop my board back here, and then we'll just go ahead and slide forward. So as I said, we wanna make sure that we've got this pushed to the side here. Let's make sure we got a tight fit. Engage the safety and the trigger, and let's go ahead and make this cut. See what we got. Okay. So we cut off this piece here, and again, still a pretty good cut here. You can see where my mark is here, my pin, and you can see that it's still, the majority of that pin mark is still on there.